live by your values, have compassion, be forgiveful. Maybe you can't forget. I mean, I can't forget the Kashmir tragedy that struck us as a community, as a family, and then me as a particular, case. But, one has to move on in life. And I guess that's what I learned from my parents. And my father used to sing this song quite often. He was a Raj Kapoor fan. We were all products of shortages economy that, so to say, left of center India, which had an aspiration to reach its own potential, Avara, and then, these are movements. So I think har subah ki shaam hoti hai, har shaam ki subah hoti hai. If you live in your past, then you're history. So to my mind, whether me, whether you, Shrikant, or in any other job, a front-end job, a back-end job, you have to constantly bring value for the day. Nobody yesterday, today, and more so tomorrow in the age of AI will have any appetite for what you did yesterday. Yesterday is history. Crisis is, a blessing for a news network, but crisis for a nation where we don't learn our lessons is a travesty, is a tragedy for the country.
Not everything that matters needs to be loud. Some conversations help you pause, some help you see differently, and some stay with you long after they end. Welcome to Inspire Someone today, my dear listeners, a space for honest conversations about life, work, and the choices that shape who we become. No quick fixes, no borrowed certainty, just real stories, thoughtful reflection, and the quiet courage to live with intention. This is Inspire Someone today, where conversations are human, reflective, and meant to stay with you. Inspiration is common, execution is rare. This is Inspire Someone today, starting our new series, Portfolio Life. Portfolio Life is a series of reflective conversations that looks life as a portfolio of choices, not as a linear career. Joining us today is a familiar face on your television screens, somebody who has worked at top levels with India's leading news brands, including the Economic Times, CNN News 18, Forbes, India, Z News, BBC World Service, Sahara TV, the list goes on. We are here having this conversation with Rakesh Khar with a simple but uncomfortable question. What does a life of importance quietly take away? Rakesh Khar has spent decades inside newsrooms, interacting with ministers, bureaucrats, policymakers, watching decisions made under pressure operate when the stakes are real. He has seen power up close. He has seen urgency shape identity. He has seen what sustains people and what slowly erodes them. But this conversation is not about headlines. It's about the human side of responsibility. What happens to you? What happens to your inner life when your outer life never slows down? This is Portfolio Life through the lens of someone who has watched it unfold in real time. It's an absolute joy to have Rakesh join us to this first episode of the Portfolio series. Rakesh, couldn't have been more happy to have you on this session.
Good afternoon, Shrikant. The pleasure is equally mine. I must compliment you not just on your podcast, but on the theme that you picked up. I mean, it's a courageous theme because, headlines generate headlines. They have virality about them. But when you talk about life beyond headlines, you tend to get into a zone which may not necessarily be as exciting, or if I can use the phrase exciting, but then, these are real issues that shape up mindsets and possibly help shape up generations going forward, because how you play the innings, and that too an enduring innings, is dependent on what your DNA is and how do you play that DNA. And that brings in an element of resilience, an element of, humility, an element of being able to take it on your chin and then staying humble and to the ground.
So we'll touch upon all of those facets, Rakesh. So first up, when you look back at your own life, not your career, which phase demanded the most from you emotionally, even if it didn't look dramatic from the outside?
Well, I mean, there are quite a few moments in one's life. I just turned 60. It's a sweet landmark in one's life last year. So there are quite a few occasions. It will be a little difficult to pick one, but I would imagine I will create a zone rather than one particular date. See, I came out of Kashmir while my parents were still there. And my family lived in Srinagar, and they had to forcefully migrate out of Kashmir due to the terrorism problem in that state. I used to work with Kashmir Times in Jammu, which was the publication center. And then I came to Delhi, and that was 1991. I got my job with the Economic Times. It was a great professional high. It was a great personal high. But, so to say, emotionally, it was most challenging also because there was a high, which was professional. There was a low because my parents were forced out of Kashmir and they had to live in a extremely difficult, adverse situations, leaving everything that they had in Kashmir, come to Jammu. And then I was in Delhi, and then I was to get married. Unfortunately, my father also was not well. He had chronic kidney disorder, and he was admitted in AIMS here. And unfortunately, I lost him. So my parents lost everything. I lost my father. And this coincided, Shrikant, with the professional eye that I had being at the Economic Times and being a frontline reporter. So, that was an interesting situation. But I had great people to work with. Mr. Nayanan, who had hired me, I think a great emotional faculty he had as an editor and as a CEO running that news platform, and with people like A.K. Bhattacharya, who was my boss, immediate boss. I think they lent immense emotional faculty to me. And I must say that why I'm quoting this period, because I got married because the date was set, and my father insisted that I do get married on the same date even when he's not there. So practically on the 13th day of my father's 13th day, I had to get married. So I got married. It was a very modest ceremony. So all of this put together really shaped me up. And then my family, my wife was and my mom, they really, really played great support. My mom is no longer there, unfortunately, but my wife and my children now, they've been the emotional anchor. And I think that moment of adversity, my strength, I drew from my parents in their sanskaras, the value system they gave me. And my father was a teacher, and he had great belief in values, and he also taught us to live by that maxim. And I think that's the biggest learning I have, and that is the biggest opportunity and challenge I see even today, if I am able to live by that. Live by your values, have compassion, be forgiveful. Maybe you can't forget. I mean, I can't forget the Kashmir tragedy that struck us as a community, as a family, and then me as a particular case. But one has to move on in life, and I guess that's what I learned from my parents. And if we're able to sort of say sustain this value system which keeps you grounded, I have had very high moments in my professional life. Very early on in my age, I co-launched Z News at the age of 32, which was India's most formidable television channel. But I, imagined, and that was the time I was regularly anchoring, Shrikant. I have had the opportunity to interview 3 prime ministers. I interviewed almost every politician, barring Mrs. Sonia Gandhi. At that age, there was a chance to get astray with that power streak. But I guess my parents' teaching, and I'm a devotee of Ramakrishna Paramahansa. I follow Swami Vivekananda. So I think this great combination is my biggest strength.
Wonderful, great start, great anecdote out there. I know a lot of it has also come to that resilience that kind of spoke about values, resilience. And as you have grown over the years, which of these has kind of come to your aid in terms of shaping yourself, who you are, whether consciously or otherwise? How does that help you kind of shape up you, the person?
I think, one is that people hate to use that word, but I think it's important. As a microscopic minority in Kashmir, even when things were fine, you were on the margins. And then once you were pushed out and you lost everything there emotionally, you lost your roots, that survival capability is something very, very important. But there are 2 routes to survival. One is that, you play by the night, as they call, fly by night operator. Or the second one is what I learned from my parents is that you work hard, don't give up. There is light at the end of the day. And my father used to sing this song quite often. He was a Raj Kapoor fan. We were all products of shortages economy that, so to say, left of center India, which had an aspiration to reach its own potential, Avara, and then, these are movements. So I think har subah ki sham hoti hai, har sham ki subah hoti hai. These are 2 guiding lines which, so to say, still keep me alive and grounded. Because there's nothing permanent. We're all tenants, Shrikant, in this world. We may live in a 3 BHK, 4 BHK, 5-story house, either in the office or at your home. Ultimately, we're all tenants. We'll be carried back. Humne hafte aaye the, we will go back like that. But we don't remember that. I think my father's and my parents' teaching and being a devotee of Ramakrishna Mission, that element of, at one level, survival, at another level, being very, very grounded. These are two principles I think have helped me sustain myself. This is my 39th year in the profession, in the newsroom, out of which several decades have been in leadership. So if you're able to stay course and, be grounded, I think the nature and the environment and the ecosystem will play accordingly and, help you.
So lovely, so wonderful anchors to have, to look up to. And what once you believed as an essential to have a good life, do you see that differently today?
Absolutely. I think, this question keeps me haunting. One that, it's a package, Shrikant. We had tremendous shortages. Today, there is surplus income. There is disposable income. But then that commune is not there. That family is not there. I mean, family, I have 2 loving kids, my wife, and then extended my own brothers and sister. But, it's the core is the parents. When both of them are not there, I used to work very hard because, we lived in a small 2-bedroom rented house in Delhi, and I got my mom here. And, she was, we first, when my father died, we came to Delhi. I was already in Delhi, but my mom came to Delhi. They completely shifted from Srinagar to Jammu, and then Jammu to Delhi. We lived in a, so to say, a Barsati in Malviya Nagar. It was exorbitant rent. But the landlady, we were on the top floor in 47 temperature in, 92. She would cut down water supply. It would not allow us to, run the meter to draw water. And then, at times she was finicky. She would not allow the maid to come up. So from that sense, what that time felt, apna ghar ho, apna ye ho, बहुत बड़ा एक लग रहा था. आज मुझे लग रहा है कि यार, God has been kind. Does it really matter? And in retrospect, there's a saying, things look better. I think, the time I spent with my mom and even in, so to say, not so good looking monetary environment, I think those are happier times. That again points, Shrikant, to the reality that I see every day, every minute. All this is ethereal. All this is going to evaporate one day, and it doesn't truly belong to you.
So true. And when that whole noise settles down, at the peak of it, at the moment you say, how I wish I had this, how I wish I had that kind of stuff. But now when the voice settles and you're kind of not constantly in motion, what thoughts or concerns tend to surface now?
Well, I think, there's a sense of, actually a deep sense of gratitude that is, so to say, overwhelming me. I really want to give back. So I spend a lot of time with students. I want to increase that quantum. I also feel that, professionally, while I might have, so to say, endured, but the level of and the quality of output that I did when I was a very young reporter or a newsroom manager or a newsroom leader, that quality, unfortunately, is falling by the side. And I'm really pained to see, the news genre's credibility somehow, not being able to sustain itself, whatever be the reasons, market forces, lack of talent, pressures of revenue, ownership challenges, concentration of ownership. But net, I think, the pride of that byline doing a small story is, I think some of the stories that I've done as a reporter, they're still very fresh in my mind rather than, what I said on, say, India-US trade deal. That looks very transactional. That little one byline story. I'll give an example. When terrorism hit Kashmir, my parents were still there. Our office in Srinagar for Kashmir Times, there were hartals, there were, lights were switched off. So sending stories became a difficulty. Those days we used to send stories on a telex, and publication center was Jammu. So, I was shifted to Jammu, so to say, man the Kashmir desk. And that was quite an interesting role where I was part of the editorial desk as also a frontline reporter. It's a small newspaper then, but very respected then, Kashmir Time. Now, of course, it's gone the other way around, in the wrong direction, unfortunately, to my mind. Some would say, that's arguable. But when I came to Jammu, as a reporter, you're trained to look at sites which are uncommon. So, if you're in Delhi, we know that ye bazaar yahan Shani ko lagta hai, ya Sarojini Nagar mein Friday ko lagta hai, ya Bangalore mein, these are like sights and sounds which you've grown up. Since I was not from Jammu, I encountered some fresh sights and sounds, like, these milk women who came from the upper reaches and wore a certain dress. they would deliver milk to various houses. So we started a series called Jammu Jottings. And those observations, there's a typical, guy who used to come in the morning to ask for some alms. They used to be called Changam. They would play a certain kind of music. And then there was a kachalu shop where college girls, which was near my office. Kachalu is a version of aloo, but it's an afternoon snack. And all these college girls, boys would come and converse. It was in a small street gully, but it was so popular, there was a waiting period. So I wrote about all of them. And I still feel, far more excited about visiting that story, which happened in 87, 88.
So those very few lines, you definitely got me back into nostalgic history mode, kind of vividly see India of those times. Very fresh, very refreshing. And Rakesh, for somebody who has been in the thick of action, you have been interacting with policymakers, bureaucrats, ministers, senior leaders. I'm sure through your lens, if you were to look, after watching all of these different genres of people operating who are under constant pressure, what have you noticed that actually sustains people over a long period of time, and what erodes them quietly?
Quite an interesting question. This is something that's been, so to say, again, preoccupying my mind. In 2019, I used to work with Network 18, and they have a product called First Post. First Post, for a brief while just before the election, general elections, they launched a weekly newspaper. Otherwise, it is a digital platform, very popular. And First Post, incidentally, now is more popular because of Palki Sharma. She does a show called Vantage. But I had the opportunity to work with Palki at two places, at Sahara and Network 80. So I did a piece on India's evergreen babus. So I picked up 4 top bureaucrats. N.K. Singh was one, and who is still active. He was the chairman of the 15th Finance Commission. And he, last I remember on budget day, he gave a very succinct commentary. And then I spoke about Mr. Damodaran, who was SEBI chief, now is, an ombudsman, and he was also at the finance ministry. Third bureaucrat, I'm remembering, I'll just give me 30 seconds to remember. I actually picked up Bimal Jalan, 4 bureaucrats. I spoke to them. Not all of them came on record. And then I looked at my first interaction with N.K. Singh happened in 90s when he was in the finance ministry. I think he was revenue secretary. I went as a trainee with my boss and to meet him. And now you see, I was print and not television. So this gentleman insisted that we take a photographer with us. These are non-visibility days, if you can use that phrase. So he posed for the camera, the still camera. And I think Jitendra Sharma was the photographer, if I remember correctly. These are 91, 92, 93, whichever. But then he said, I am representing Government of India, so I have to look in a certain manner. So these 2 lines made an indelible impression on me. And that N.K. Singh became, he was in the Prime Minister's office with Mr. Vajpayee. He was, then also an advisor to Nitish Kumar when he was Nitish Kumar earlier as Chief Minister. Then he was 15th Finance Commission. He was part of, with Larry Summers, I guess, in reforming the World Bank and IMF. That was a recent committee report. So he's actually endured 4-5 generations being at the top. So to answer your question, what does it take to endure? To my mind, you need to have a package where someone would and they were right politically correct. They know which side of the wall, but then there have been different political regimes. So there is some intrinsic capability, which I call a profound skill set, which is your core KRA. Second, ability to bring value for that day. If you live in your past, then you're history. So to my mind, whether me, whether you, Shrikant, or in any other job, a front-end job, a back-end job, you have to constantly bring value for the day. Nobody yesterday, today, and more so tomorrow in the age of AI will have any appetite for what you did yesterday. Yesterday is history. And then their ability to package themselves well. So package is also very important. Bring value for the day. For instance, Amitabh Kant, he extended his tenure in bureaucracy. I have interacted with him on several occasions. There are, interviews that I've done with him when he was G20 chair in India. And he represents by and large these packages. And now once he shifted and pivoted from the so-called Sarkari sector to the private sector, there is a beeline of companies which have wooed him. So it's not just, one can make light of it saying that uska sarkar mein connection hai, isliye wo kar raha hai. But that's also a KRA. I mean, businesses are built at the cusp of policy, P&L, community, consumer, civil society. That's what all enterprise is all about. So in that sense, but what has changed over the years, to my mind, is the names and numbers I mentioned are far and few. I think that's a bit of a sad story for India. I would have personally felt that we need to expand this canvas. We need many more policymakers who are able to sustain themselves, and not just in policy, Shrikant. It should happen across board. It should happen in politics. I'll give you an example of, from my own field. Mr. A.K. Bhattacharya, who was my immediate boss, is now the editorial director of Business Standard. He was the editor, then he was chairman of the editorial board. Then, he endures. I think he's maybe a decade older to me, roughly. And he endures that core KRA, that karma and dharma of delivering for the day and not living in the past. He runs a column called Rice in Oils, A.K. Bhattacharya, in Business Standard, which is probably one of the longest running columns. Swaminathan Ankleshwara, Rajat Sharma. Rajat Sharma is a phenomenal example. If you look at television landscape in India, he is the most enduring show that India has recognized and rewards even today. Aapki Adalat. And then doesn't come from a business family, but look at his business capability. He had all the right connections. He's very well connected. He is among the best faces India has produced. Yet he has restricted himself to one channel. This expansionist tendency that all of us have. Aur chahiye, ye bhi chahiye, wo bhi chahiye. The caveat is that I have not worked directly with him, but he's known to be, because I've been around as well. But I think he made immense value business judgment by not expanding beyond one channel, which is India TV. These are qualities which help you endure. And my lament is that across domains, we don't have many such, so to say, faculties, not as many faces, and bureaucracy, judiciary, endurance, to my mind, going forward is going to be even a bigger challenge. And I mean, there are instances where you get simply caught, your bride, but you have all the capabilities, but you're caught on the political divide. But that's the nature of the beast.
You make some very valid observations, points, particularly in the context of what we are talking, portfolio life, right? You speak about enduring, you speak about bring value for the day. I would want to touch upon that. That's a very nice phrase that you coined there, bring value for the day. If you were to kind of dig a little more deeper, given the fact that you work across the spectrums of the political landscape, you have seen the industry, and you're also working with students. What does it actually mean in the current day and age?
Shrikant, to my mind, it means just one thing: reimagine, reinvent, reshape yourself, unlearn, reskill. Don't live in a status quo. Status quo is for the dead. Challenge yourself. And unfortunately, I must point out, I don't want to be judgmental, to borrow a phrase from, Tanu, it's Manu 2, where that girl says, let me be judgmental, don't be judgmental, that famous song. I see a deep gap among the younger generation in terms of, their ability to challenge the status quo. They're bright, they're young, they're more technology oriented, but that hunger, to my mind, is not available in the same zone. Now, from a socio-economic perspective, Shrikant, one could argue they are not, so to say, beneficiaries, I would say, but someone say victim of shortages economy. Their parents have seeded in, for them a certain basic framework where they don't have to पहली तरह मतलब rent के मकान से फिर एक अपना घर लेना है. Maybe many of these things are sorted, especially in big urban centers. But if you don't have hunger and that fire in your belly, and that fire is not a one-day phenomenon, it's a 24 into 7 into 365 days phenomenon. If that doesn't happen, then there are greater chances of burnout. I mean, I quite agree with Kapil Dev when he says that, when I was playing, he was in, completely from a non-big metro phenomenon. Or for MS Dhoni, for instance, MS Dhoni. MS Dhoni is my idol. I really value him as a great personality when it comes to portfolio of life. I'll explain that a little later. But what happens is that when Kapil Dev said that, I never heard of this word called mental stress. He says, I was new na अंग्रेजी आती है, अपनी team में मैं पढ़ाया हूँ. I mean, not in as many words, but pointing to that. Because, there was this Bombay club, English, upscale, tier 1 cities. This guy came from Chandigarh, but then the belonging was very humble. So today, this sense of a bit of a victim mentality, even when you put someone under little pressure, makes people, so to say, go into the shell, and they are not able to challenge themselves. I think there's tremendous potential. I have a general view that today's youngsters are far more intelligent. They are far more integrity than us. But that big ticket push and drive is not happening to my mind.
Just an extension of that, since you're talking about the current generation and your interaction with students. So when you actually interact with students today, what do you find yourself not encouraging anymore, even if it once seemed very important to you?
Well, as I said, there's some bright students. I can say for my profession, unfortunately, we are unable to attract the best of the students, as was the case earlier. And the reason for that is our own failure to present journalism or media as a virtue that it used to stand for. Because the media, as I said, the P&L pressure, all those challenges have, so to say, somewhere our own inability to put journalism as the panacea for all ills, social and political. So in that sense, when you don't get the right kind of quality of students that you want, I was on the executive board of Indian Institute of Mass Communication. For 1 year, I was also the admission committee chairman. One, that hunger is missing. Second, there is a very perverse kind of hunger. The hunger to become a star overnight. So in our profession, what happens is that you spend a lot of time being the back end, and sometime once you rise, you become a front end. And that great urge to overnight, I come into journalism. Everybody wants to become an anchor. But, to my mind, an anchor is a stage where you really have picked up all other skills. You have domain knowledge, at least in a couple of pieces, and then you rise there. So one has to channelize this hunger in a manner that it becomes very productive. But, without proper channelizing, without proper context, and then, there are not enough jobs also available because news media is, so to say, unfortunately packaged into 4 or 5 big companies. And we don't have the luxury of, say, for instance, in PR or in, it's like your sector IT. They're just 4 big 4. I was actually having a chat with the Honorable Minister, Mr. Vaishnav, at one of our summits live. I, took the liberty to ask him that why is it that we're not able to go beyond 4 or 5 companies? We have IT, we have TCS, we have Infosys, we have Wipro, we have Cognizant. Last 40 years, I've not been able to go to another 40 names. So that problem is happening to media as well. I'm not going to get into names, but you know what I'm saying. And that consolidation is happening further between 2 big business houses.
That's true. So true that it's an amalgamation of forces at play, right? One is the individual himself or herself having that hunger. Instant gratification is there and for real. And lack of those role models as well. Lack of people who can show the way.
I said fewer platforms, but fewer role models also.
So true. And again, drawing your attention back to your conversations, your interactions with people in power. How does prolonged exposure to power or urgency or constant scrutiny change the way people show up? Have you seen in close quarters with others? How does they kind of show up when they are subject to all of these elements?
See, politics, say when I was in Economic Times in 90s, politicians were wary of touching anything business. उनको लगता है यार हमारे समझ की नहीं, इसका कोई linkage नहीं है. Today, that entire package has got reversed. The first point of impact and power is business. So that intersection is where politicians get into play. So that's a big change I have seen. And they feel that if you really have to be influential, you have to be in that intersection of business and politics. For the India story, which is developing, that intersection is something that attracts politicians. Second big trend, Shrikant, is, we live in a social media age, which is the age of instant gratification. I call, this social media is trigger happy. One trigger happy is like the gun shooting in US, which is a malaise occurs. Fortunately for India, it's not a problem here. But the trigger happy on social media is something that makes all politicians live in a 24/7 visibility. Now, it has 2 consequences. One is that it puts you in audit and it makes you put up your best performance. But the other side, the negative piece here is that you now start planning to live for social media. Many of our politicians across hues would, so to say, live at using social media to further deepen their connect with democracy, rather than, tweeting, retweeting their leaders and, so to say, marking their presence. And that brings me back to the question, what do you bring on the table today? Did you retweet your leader or you did something more original? And social media has its own perks, as I keep saying. India, with its penetration of social media, is the capital of social media. Whether you take, Facebook, you take Twitter, we are one of the major destinations. WhatsApp, anyway, it's called a WhatsApp country. I'm taking you away from WhatsApp University for a moment. So in that sense, there's so much more you can do in terms of governance when you apply these tools. So, politicians also have a problem. Their existence, unka jo core care is through visibility, unfortunately, today. Visibility on social media, visibility in media, rather than visibility in their own consciences, where they should actually nourish them. So it's a package. It depends upon how you play it.
And shifting the conversation back to portfolio life, if we were to kind of look at your own portfolio life, Rakesh, among the many transitions in your life, roles, formats, responsibilities, which one changed you most as a person, not just professionally, but as a person? Let's pause here for a moment. You may have noticed one idea quietly settling in, something that doesn't need an answer yet, just awareness. Inspire Someone Today has always been about conversations that stay with you beyond the episode. Sometimes they continue in reflection, sometimes in action, and sometimes in community. If you'd like to engage beyond the podcast, there is an IST community where these conversations are carried forward thoughtfully. And if you prefer your own quiet space, the book, Inspire Someone Today, gathers many of these ideas for slower reflection. Let's continue.
I think, each role has a contribution, I would imagine. When I rejoined Network 18 in 2014, I had first quit ET95 and joined Raghav Bell, and it was called Television 18. Raghav is a visionary in, news television, and I learned at his command and television. And then I left Television 18 in 97 and joined Z, which was a big player. So then I came back to, by then it had become Network 18 in 2014. So, the current MD and CEO who joined in 2015 didn't want me in a newsroom role. So, he wanted me to align to a different function. I was initially slighted. I, felt that, all my life I've been, so to say, in the pure play newsroom. But he wants me to align to a slightly different function, which I was not familiar with. And obviously, if I was not that familiar with, I was not comfortable with. So this is piece of the content which is aligned to revenue. For instance, X company wants to use the media as a real estate to convey a message, but it's done in a very, very editorially credible manner. And then this is something what we call the co-curated content, which is in the era of IPs. IPs, what it is in the IT space. IPs here are intellectual property, ideas. For instance, X company and Network 18, X company and TV9, where I work right now, is the largest television news network, are playing together to sustain either a campaign, like Mission Pani we did at Network 18. Digitizing India we did with Cisco at Network 18. We have a lot of properties here where you have a partner. So there was a lot of discomfort with this. So, but then when I applied myself, I realized that, as it is the news genre on the mainframe 24/7 cycle, news is being broken on Twitter. We are just following it up with reactions. He said that, she said that. And then the individual biases of the reporter, the editor, the platform, and the framework come into play. There's very little original content. So even after having spent, I was 50 then, even after having spent so much time, as I went into it, I realized that, we are generally governed by headlines and, so I used to say this sentence, which didn't make me very popular. We have outsourced the newsroom prime time to an OB. OB is an outside broadcast van, where from you get live signals. So, you switch off the newsroom, play the OB, because there's some big politician saying. So I, maybe by default, when Mr. Rahul Joshi, who came in, who was my ex-colleague at ET, when I saw this transition, I imagined that, the way I've looked at journalism and the way it is shaping up, because there is revenue pressure indeed. So, journalism is a cost center. It needs to pivot in a more credible manner without compromising on the basic tenets of journalism. So that learning is phenomenal. It also helped me reimagine myself. So today, I feel I have a better view of the news genre or the news, product. I have a 360-degree view rather than just being a cost center, asking for more reporters, asking for more resources, and, asking for more OB vans and more infrastructure, rather than being, so to say, accountable for what exactly happens to sustaining the salaries of, say, 1,000 employees who work with me. So in that sense, that's been one big moment. I feel that that brings me back to what do you bring on the table today? I'm not saying that because I did or I got to do it, God was there. As I said, God has been extremely kind. If you get stuck in the comma full stop business of day-to-day journalism, there are not enough jobs at senior level. That's why some of the people, they're much brighter than me. They're more well-read, have fallen by the wayside. You get off track. That's the reality of the market. So reinvent yourself, reimagine yourself, pick up new skills, be ready to challenge the status quo. I mean, that brings me back to the first point. Status quo is for dead.
And reinvention is a key at no matter what state of your life that you are, at career you are.
I can tell you this gentleman, Vivek Oberoi, we know him as a B-lister actor or, with a few movies and a failed romance. But that apart, he was one of our summits in Dubai where, he's now become a big ticket entrepreneur. He's invested in real estate. He's moved to Dubai permanently. And he's getting global coverage for his endeavors. And I was writing the title for that. I called it The Second Act. So believe me, he is such an excellent speaker. I'll send you the link that he's that piece. That actually, you should get him for this podcast because he's an apt example of that transition and portfolio of life. And he spoke so eloquently. He first and foremost made light of this sentence, second act. He says there's no second and every act has to be reimagining yourself. So when you wake up every morning, you have to reimagine yourself. And, he says, I haven't done, maybe tomorrow I'll do something else. But don't link it to failure or success and that being the trigger for that pivot. The pivot is that you have to challenge yourself. You might win, you might lose, bad day, good day. But don't ever, get into that complacent zone. There are some very lucky people, top anchors in this country, rightly or wrongly. They continue to dominate headlines, but far and few in between.
Far and few in between. Rakesh, when you connect the dots across decades of your work, observation and responsibility, what truth about life feels most obvious to you now?
Nothing is permanent and nothing is in your control. Don't assume something that you don't have. God's given you that breath. Take a deep breath, look back, look inwards, say, what can you do for someone else today? And not just for yourself. I mean, I'm not being theoretical. Mm-hmm. Maybe I've not been always able to do that. But today, at 60 plus, I feel, that's the most important thing. I mean, we just incidentally are a dot in the ocean and someone else is playing the script and play it as well as you can. Play it with as much integrity as you can. But remember, and have compassion as you carry forward, sentiment. Remember, I gave you Raj Kapoor example, the irony of life. Mrs. Disa is a character there. And then Raj Kapoor, Raj Kapoor is her tenant and she really looks after him as her own son. But one tragic incident, a false injection kills her, which, of Raj Kapoor is accused of doing that. So that compassion and that irony of life, nothing is in your control. Or for instance, I give you Tanuwitz, Manu, I just resaw that movie again, Returns. You have a compassion and you feel Dato got a wrong way, the Haryanvi girl, she got a wrong edge of life. If you have those feelings for intact, even if you're very successful, and even if you're not very successful, you have those feelings inside you, kuch hota hai, then I think you're a human being.
And over here, we are definitely joining the dots, drawing upon your rich experience of 4 decades in the broadcasting space.
I told you about MS Dhoni. Why I respect MS Dhoni most? He is someone, when we talked about far and few in between, not role models, enough role models. The good thing is that we have role models outside of politics today in India. That's one very big piece in India. We were confined to one big politician, even when we have strong, leaders in states and centers. But a lot of leadership is coming from politics, fashion, beauty, technology, corporate world. So in that sense, this gentleman came from nowhere and, he impressed and impressed and impressed and had the ability to win. And he, never showcased that, so to say, how success rubs you off on the wrong way. He always showed success rubs you off in the right way. And then now look at the clones that he has created. I mean, he is brought about a paradigm shift in terms of what we call cricket, a gentleman's game, but essentially an elitist game, belonging to the Bombay Delhi club, and then pivoting away to the rest of India. We need such examples across India. So the portfolio of life with Dhoni as an example, or, Saurav Ganguly, for instance, though he came from a slightly better background, in picking Dhoni, we need such stories to be told. And then Dhoni is off social media. I mean, I was amazed that he didn't even react when India won the T20 World Cup again, 2024, or won Asia Cup. I think, वो जो परहेज वाली बात है, Bhagavad Gita, Ramayana teaches us our own scriptures, and my, Guru Ramakrishna Paramahansa always, would directly or indirectly say, at a certain point of time, have that parhez, distance yourself from, the situations, because it's not something that belongs to you.
Again, reflecting on, we have the scriptures, we know what to do, stay in the moment, don't expect for results, focus on actions. This is all there. We also touched upon the element that we are in a world of instant gratification. We are in a world of where things are happening on a every second basis. What would be your recommendation be to stay put in the moment, to live in the moment?
Well, I think, some amount first and foremost, an understanding and admission that you are not playing the script. You're a patra. You're an instrument. That realization will help you play your part without any immediate, results. Though we do believe that we live in an extremely transactional world. But even if it's a transactional, I think, it's important to remember that that element of gratitude. If someone has helped you, take the escalator, when you reach the top, don't forget that there were people who, really helped you reach there. And there you will remember them. And also you possibly could think of helping someone else who is trying to climb up the same way that you were trying to climb up.
This reminds me of a recent talk I attended. Boman Irani was sharing similar kind of an example. He was a hotelier before he moved into stardom. So one of his bosses told, son, take the elevator down and bring somebody up, when he became the general manager.
Yeah, that's a better conclusion than I drew. I mean, Boman Irani, again, Shrikant is a great example. He, the way he's come from nowhere and he's created a mark for himself. And he's not resting in Three Idiots. He's not resting in his earlier roles. The moment you are restless, I think that restlessness is extremely important to keep you going.
And one of the piece, Rakesh, is your years of proximity to news, crisis, and public life. What has it taught you about what matters to us in the long run?
I think, to tell you the truth, yesterday, for instance, when I'm not again being judgmental, when Youth Congress people came into the Bharat Mandapam on India AI Summit, rather than looking at it as another headline, which it is, because news is all about what we say. When a dog bites a man, it's not news. When a man bites a dog, it's news. I'm just giving as a placeholder. I didn't mean to draw any comparisons, but I personally was pained. That having looked at one crisis after another crisis hitting this country, and maybe at some level our inability to plug in the gaps that we still have. I was making a joke the other day with someone when the first day India AI Summit generated a bad headline because of long queues. And I said, maybe India AI mission is missing the logistical capability of an Amitabh Kant who did G20, which went absolutely smooth. And we also had editions in each state, including in J&K, my state, Kashmir. So crisis is, a blessing for a news network, but crisis for a nation where we don't learn our lessons is a travesty, is a tragedy for the country. I think now that you raised it, I'm going back to some of the very, very bitter headlines that I have had to sort of say navigate in the newsroom. IC-814 hijack. I was, like many other colleagues in the newsrooms across this country, part of that story. We saw the aircraft come to Amritsar. And then, despite being in Indian territory, we allowed it to go up. And then, what happened? It went, on, and the crisis persisted, but, and showed India in a certain light as extremely weak. So these episodes hurt you. I mean, for instance, Rajiv Gandhi's, killing, Indira Gandhi's killing, and some natural disasters, some man-made disasters. I think in public discourse, a greater sense of belonging and a greater sense of responsibility is the need of the hour for all of us, beginning with me and then everybody else.
And Rakesh, we are talking about portfolio life. In portfolio life, if life were to be treated that way, which part of the life you So your own experience through your own lens. Have you seen people investing a lot or under investing in some elements?
I think, in portfolio of life, generally, I would say our generation, those born, say, maybe 65 onwards or 70 onwards, we have given life, work-life balance, determined and decided cue towards, work rather than life. I would love to go back to my own, early days, my formative days. I used to work with Z. We were launching the channel. Shrikant, I used to come home at 2:30 in the night after, doing an edit meeting once our prime time was closed. And I did it. If I had to ask this question of myself, did I do it for myself? Did I do it for my family? Did I do it for my profession? I didn't see my daughter growing up. She was born in 93. By 5 years, 98, my son was born. I thought that, somewhere I did that compromise, maybe in the larger interest of giving that financial security to the family. But then, today I realize that it's not about financial security. And, that would apply to now. I feel I have to make an amendment when it comes to spending time with myself to begin with. When we say portfolio of life, it's not all just for your wife, your family, your parents. It's about yourself. I haven't conversed with myself. I think today you've given me this opportunity to reflect back. Otherwise, I'm on a treadmill 24/7. Is that the right thing to do? Am I being ambitious? Am I being greedy? I really don't know. Should I slow down? And should I have done this conversation with myself? Am I insecure? I take it back to my being a microscopic minority, booted out by terror and being let down, by my own, neighbors there. So I don't know, but it's a combination of factors. I think spending time with family in portfolio of life is extremely important. You need to travel. You need to travel with your family. You need to, use what's happening with today's kids. They are living a life. I mean, this very tragic case in Delhi that, this Korean 3 girls who committed suicide. The parents are buying time by, creating the ATM concept. They're using disposable money, throwing it at them, buying affection, and while they're busy taking the escalator, as we use that phrase. Nothing wrong with that. But then I think, ultimately you do the balance sheet, the P&L of life. If your children haven't got the time and attention they deserved from you, even if you earned $1 billion, it's not worth it.
That's a lovely line out there. That is the investment that we're talking about. What do you over-invest in and what do you under-invest? So in the spirit of building career, which is not a bad thing, but balance is the key, is what you're saying. If there is a book or few book recommendations that has quietly shaped how you think about people, power, or life, even if it wasn't written for that purpose, what would those book titles be?
I mean, I would imagine, Mahatma Gandhi's Experiments with Truth, and then Jawaharlal Nehru's Discovery of India. Then I would also imagine, I would read again and again Swami Vivekananda. I would revisit, tell people, go back and again to his Chicago address. These are philosophies that have shaped up. And also, a book is not necessarily defined, to my mind, Shrikant, by the hardcover or the cover that it's carrying. A book is a means and a medium to convey a certain learning. So I think those learnings are available in the family. If you're living in a joint family, listen to your nana, nani, listen to your dada, dadi. They have those same imports or the outputs that a book does. And in today's age and time, unfortunately, people are scared of reading books. They're very happy writing WhatsApp messages. So in that sense, I would recommend create that room for learning from others, listening to them, listen before you speak.
Rakesh, are there small personal habit or practices that helps you to stay grounded amid constant movement or information?
My father's this golden sentence, "Har subah ki shaam hai, har shaam ki subah hai."
Hey, with that. And it's so pertinent. And somebody who is in the newsroom, it's 24/7 for you, right? While it is 24/7 for us, for its other end of the spectrum. So how do you kind of stay away from some of these things? How do you kind of insulate yourself?
I mean, it's difficult to insulate. I told you I still get pained by IC814 incident. I get still pained by the tragedy that happened in Kashmir with us, where I'm a victim in that sense. But, overall suffering in Kashmir, even for, the other community members who we live together, that suffering, it has to end. they really pain you. But then, you're supposed to be report the story, not part of the story. That's the golden rule in journalism. But I think, somewhere we get impacted, we get affected. And I, early on in Jammu, and I was telling you, I got transferred there. Among the first stories there was massive rains in Jammu. It's a small city, and the river got swollen up. And I went there, and so to say, that reporters delight, and that byline kick. So I got almost completely submerged in water and dirt, and the river was flooded. There was this basement. There was this river, so to say, slum development, which got completely uprooted. So when you talk to them, you feel how blessed you are. But yet, then you have to say and tell their story. At one level, one could say that first and foremost thing should be to help them get out of that mess. Second is that I must talk to them, try and understand what their pain point is, how long they had been sitting here. And I did this piece in, I think 87 maybe. Then when I came to Delhi in 1990, when I joined ET, I think 92, the ITO bridge, there used to be a similar, what we call a similar settlement of residents there, slums. It met the same fate. I wrote another piece for Economic Times, how despite so much change, we haven't changed as a nation for a certain section of the people. In fact, I have quoted Dr. Manmohan Singh in his famous July 24, 1991 budget speech, where he says that, this chasm, and despite great reforms, great economic stride, GDP growth, India rising to number third or soon economy, we have the gap between the haves and have-nots is not decreasing any day. So the pain becomes a part of you. But that pain could take you into two directions. You could become an activist. Some of us who probably because of pain or greed have gone into politics. I think it's important to stay a course, be a journalist, tell stories of growth, tell stories of despair, tell stories of hope, and tell good stories also where, people in the sky. It's a great country. I keep saying, Ye Mera India, it amazes you every day, every second. There is a, good story happening. People are helping out one another, each other. And then there are challenges. There are pickpockets. People, there are examples of someone stealing a wearable AI device. All these are part of the package. We are 1.4 billion people. And my strong resolve and hope and prayer is that the collective, strength of 1.4 billion, everybody wants to grow. So that is the momentum. That's the driver which will take India, despite some, challenges. We are on the escalator. And I think someone very rightly put it recently. I read it. I don't remember who the guy was. He said India is like, 5 pieces. There is a Bahrain or there is a very, very rich HNI, UHNI, which is about 1%. Then there is a, UK. Then there is a Brazil. Then there is an Africa. Then there is a completely impoverished India. So, which is the larger piece. But the difference is that each piece is moving and each piece wants to take the next level. So I really like this example. And, as someone else again said, I quoted it, I repeat it, that, India continues to dismay the eternal optimist and the eternal pessimist. It continues to surprise you. And that is not because of one or two individuals. It's because of the collective will and aspiration of 1.4 billion people. India needs strong states. India needs strong center. The two need to strongly bind and complement each other. That is the India growth story I aspire for.
It's fantastic. If we were to kind of stay put with this thought process and describe India as a portfolio life, what would it look like?
It's a brilliant, I don't think, India as a country or as a destination or as a family, has a rival in any part of the world. It is such myriad expressions of, as I said, hope, despair, anxiety, anger, bonhomie, camaraderie, all of these emotions coexist. And look at our festivals. Someone had rightly said, India is in a constant festival mode. In other parts of the world, without, sounding negative, there are a couple of festivals. There is a New Year, there's a Christmas. In India, every day, every week, every day is a festival. And we know how to celebrate. Everybody doesn't have tons of money to throw and shower, but that doesn't dwarf our celebrations, our capability to celebrate. Holi is coming. You come to Delhi, you'll see every gully, every nooked, Holi is a colorful stream. So personally, I don't enjoy that festival because, in any activity, there will be some antisocial elements, but then larger sentiment is very, very important. And by and large, we are deeply democratic. We have a civilizational dividend, and we have this constant aspiration, which I said, to move the block. And that deep desire to do well, I think, if we are able to match the aspiration of economic growth and also the family values, as I kept saying, if you marry the two, if you have to describe India as a family and portfolio of life, in that sense, if you're able to marry the two, we have a great success story.
It's a fantastic response, Rakesh. Couldn't have summarized it so unequivocally as you have done. Thank you for doing that. If I were to request you to suggest a small experiment for all of our listeners, a small experiment for living a more sustainable life under pressure, what would it be?
I mean, difficult, but then, remember, it could have been worse off. That's what you have to always say. I mean, I remember Lord Buddha saying that, can you find a home where there is no one crying? So in that sense, if you're able to bring your own learning from your civilizational perspective, most of the adversities will look small. I'm not saying, you close your eyes and adversity is gone. There are challenges. First and foremost is take it on your chin. Don't duck. Don't disappear. Take it there, and then you might fail, you might succeed. There would be some bruises, but you could emerge, you could be victorious as well.
Rakesh, this never looked like a 40 years of broadcasting experience coming to us. This is like life experience from your rich shared life that you have had. Thank you so much for doing this, sharing your life journey with me and my listeners. Before you and I sign off, Inspire Someone Today is all about creating ripples of inspiration. What's your Inspire Someone Today message to all the listeners?
I mean, I might sound repetitive that, remember, tomorrow is another day, and live for the moment today. And, plan and prepare yourself for challenges that you know that you don't know. And be grounded, be humble.
Plan, prepare, live for the moment, be grounded, be humble. I think we can't ask for more. We cannot.
And wear compassion as your constant companion.
Yeah. He has spoken multiple times about compassion. Where is this whole sense of compassion coming from?
I think, my own my own upbringing in Kashmir, my parentage, and I think we are missing on the compassion component as one big family, if I can call on India. And, these tough cities, these hard, metros, they make you, even if you're very compassionate by your DNA, they push you to, be a little indifferent. So I think, we need to wear a mask and say, no, I'm not going to allow my compassion to go out.
What small little experiment people can do to kind of reinvigorate that compassion in them or in the society.
So, yeah, I think it's a very good, important point. I think, as a matter of gratitude, even if you are, a delivery boy, he has someone to thank, the warehouse owner or a company that has hired him. And when I employ him, if I can say thank you and say that, did you have water? If he's coming at 12 o'clock in the night, I hope you had dinner. I think that little thing makes a difference rather than treat him as, as your errand boy. He's not. He's got parents waiting home. He's coming in the middle of the night. He has to sleep. I don't know when he has slept, or your Uber driver or your Ola driver. And then, please remember that, they're all making your life easier. All those who are part of your life, trying to help you live a better life, and your own family, which give you the DNA, which is undisputable. Marry the two and have a sense of gratitude.
Thank you for spending this time with us. Conversations like this remind us that growth doesn't always come from answers. It often comes from better questions. Inspire Someone Today began with the belief that each of us has the power to make a difference. Not through grand gestures, but through everyday choices. That belief still holds, now with a little more depth and a lot more listening. If something from today's episode stayed with you, carry it forward, share it, sit with it, or explore it further through the IST community or the book Inspire Someone Today. Until we meet again, stay curious, keep inspiring, and inspire someone today.